This leads then to the conversation about the debt ceiling, which is the 16 trillion, 16.4 trillion that exists right now. That money was spent on something. Now, not all of it was wasted. I'm assuming that there was an inspector general in various guises to oversee the disbursement of that money. How do you respond to people that say, look, 16 trillion, what's the difference, whether it's 16 trillion or 60 trillion? It's a number that just indicates where we've decided to put our resources. The debate should be about where the resources go and not about the actual number.
Well, I think that's true. I mean, obviously everyone in this room, they understand this more than anyone. But it's really a question of, you're going to borrow money and spend it, what your return is on that spending. So if we're investing that money in things that bring a greater return than the interest that we have to pay, then it really isn't that much of a concern, or shouldn't be that much of a concern, because that's a positive return. Businesses all the time obviously borrow money, they lever up because they expect a greater return. So that's not an offensive thing. But the idea that we have this artificial cap on what the debt limit should be, and that this Congress has authorized spending beyond that cap, and now is going to say, because of this ridiculous Nixonian era law that says that we're going to have a cap on our budget that has to be separately increased apart from the budget. I mean, that money has already been allocated. This Congress, or the previous Congress, already allocated, obligated, said go spend this money on these programs. You can spend it, and by the way, when you do, we know it's going to go over this cap. And now for any political party, and it used to be the Democrats, right, when it was President Bush, and now it's the Republicans under President Obama, to play games with this and to suggest that this is somehow tied to spending that they already authorized to be spent is beyond reckless. I mean, it really is very dangerous. On the other hand, you have President Obama saying, well, this time I'm not going to negotiate, and I'm daring you to go over the cliff, which is probably what he should have said in 2011. But now, last time we went through this, he caved so spectacularly to the Republicans in the House. There's going to be the presumption that will happen again, and that's sort of where my fear is. If he draws that line and refuses to negotiate, and the Republicans understandably believe that that's just talk, that he's going to have to negotiate, because if you remember last time, there really was a cave, and it was under the advice of Secretary Geithner that you have to cave because the alternative is just too horrible. If you have these two immovable objects clash, I mean, the consequences for the country and the global economy will be so serious. Now, I believe, of course, just like I believe with this last thing, they're going to come to an agreement. They're going to come to a resolution at the last second. But meanwhile, we're going to have 2 more months of incredible uncertainty, this incredible pressure on businesses who don't necessarily know what's going next. I mean, how can you as a business hire if you don't know whether the lunatics in Washington are going to drive us into a national default? And it's just this cycle that seems to have been with us now for, since at least middle of 2011. And the real question is there going to be a light to the end of this tunnel? Is Congress and the White House going to get their act together and stop getting in the way of recovery and start supporting a recovery? And this frustration and anger out there, I think, is very real. It kind of reminds me when the Tea Party first started emerging, in the anger after the bailouts, when I was down in Washington in late 2008 and early 2009, this sort of gathering storm of anger at Washington. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a triggering of that if this continues on its current path.